What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show this evening. Welcome to How to File a Mining Claim with Mr. Shannon Poe and Jere Clements. Like to hopefully make sure that everybody's having a good evening. Shannon, go ahead and take it from here, brother man, if you want to get everybody grounded for the first part of the series.
Right on. Well, hey, we want to just thank everybody for joining us tonight. And this is something that Jere and I have actually talked about for a couple of years that is very long overdue, is to do a video format and really kind of do the whole live aspect where people can ask questions. And the whole issue about how to file a mining claim in America is pretty complex. And there's a lot of different roads and avenues that can take you down, from plans of operations to, can other people come and camp on there while you're mining? And can you stay longer than 14 days? We're going to try to address all of those issues, as well as the paperwork, the research, how to determine if the mining claim that you're interested in is actually open. And so it's going to take a couple of part series in order to do that. But before we get started, guys, I just want to tell you about a book that is out there. And it's written by a really good friend of ours and a really hell of a nice guy. His name is Tom Kitcher, and he's a miner that's been mining for many, many, many moons. This is his book. Thanks for putting that up there, Jere.
Yeah.
Anyway, Tom is on Facebook under Tom Kitcher, Kitchar. And he wrote this book a number of years ago, and I think you can get it for $25 or something like that. And it's extremely comprehensive, and we would encourage you guys to go out and obtain this book, because it really goes through the whole process. Now, there's been some changes and stuff that have happened with mining claims and really with the BLM websites and stuff since Tom wrote the book. And so that's the kind of stuff that we're going to cover in here, and then also answer some of those other questions. And Jaren actually came up with a really great idea today, and we're going to do a segment that really kind of dispels some of the, how do we want to word that, mistruths out there about mining claims and what you can and can't do and all this. Because, guys, since we announced this a couple of weeks ago that we were going to do this, we've seen a million different people opine, and a lot of times very, very incorrectly on what you can and can't do. And so we want to really clarify that from a legal standpoint, and make sure that you know what you can and can't do on a mining claim, and then also go over what the federal laws are, the original mining grants that were passed in the 1800s that give us all of these rights. So with that being said, we encourage you guys to ask questions, and you can send those. I don't even know what that format looks like, because all I'm looking at is a screen here. I know Jaren gets those questions, and we're going to try to answer those. Now, the way that we're going to do this podcast, or this little series of podcasts, is today we're really going to cover what it takes to actually file the mining claim. And then next week, we're going to go through, and more specifically, Jere will, because he's really the technical wizard when it comes to the BLM MLRS website, and really how to research. Because first and foremost, the number one thing that you have to do is, if you want to go out and file a mining claim, you have to find land that is in the public domain, meaning public lands, that are open for mineral entry. So, as an example, you can't go into Yosemite National Park and file a mining claim next to the lodge and start digging with the backhoe. Doesn't work that way. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to cover, is how do you determine if the land is open? Well, I kind of want to step back a little bit and talk about how things used to be, and then where we're at and how we actually got here today. So back in some of the older miners, from 10, 15 years ago would remember, there was a website. There were actually two websites on the BLM server, if you will. And one of them was the LR 2000, which really gave you the details on mining claims in a specific range, township, and section. So let's say it was, Blue Creek out of Tuolumne County. you could go onto this website prior to 2012 that was called the Geo Communicator. And it was a really cool website, and it was very user-friendly, and the miners loved it. And of course, when the miners love something, government, of course, immediately has to try to take that away because we like it and they don't, because they really don't like mining claims. So anyway, but you would click on this website and it would open up a topo map. So you could look at all of California and double click and double click and double click and double click until you zoom all the way into Blue Creek in Tuolumne County. And you would see a section on your screen that maybe encompasses 2 miles. On that screen would be that topo map, and it would show you either gray grid lines or pink grid lines. Pink meant it was filed, that there was claims filed on it, and the gray ones said, nope, it's open for mineral entry and you could claim it. Talk about easy, guys. I mean, literally back in those days, I was on that website probably 3 or 4 times a week, and it's how we obtained some of our really, really good mining claims because, hell, you didn't have to do all of this yoga to try to determine if the claim was actually open. So that's what happened. And in 2012, Mr. Obama, via an executive action, changed all of that. He also changed the filing costs, and we're going to cover that a little bit as well in this podcast. And that is, back in the day, prior to, I believe it was September of 2012, you could file a 20-acre claim, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160, whatever you wanted. All of it was the same cost, and it was around $200 with the county recording fees and everything else. So you could file a 160-acre claim for the same price that you could file a 20-acre claim. Obama changed that to be every 20 acres that you went up incrementally, that the price went up as well. And so if it was $165 for a 20-acre claim, now it's $165 plus $165 for a 40-acre, and so on and so forth until you get to $1,300 or whatever it is now for a 160-acre claim. So, and they took away the Geo Communicator, and then of course they had people that have nothing to do with mining claims or understanding mining claims. Computer programmers came in and they developed this, what's called the MLRS system, which is about as, I mean, it's really shitty, to be honest with you. It's just really unuser friendly. And Jerry has mastered this, and that's really what he's going to cover next week. But anyway, so that's what you have to use now to navigate to determine if the land is open. So the other thing that I wanted to bring up initially here is people that go out and buy mining claims off of Craigslist or, you know, on Facebook and stuff like that. Guys, in our experience, and it's a couple of decades of experience, there's very, very few folks out there that are really legitimate that sell mining claims. And so I can't tell you, Jerry, take a guess at a number, 20 people that we've helped over the last 10 years that have fallen for some type of a, not necessarily a scam, but they bought either a mining claim that said that it was filed and all it was done, it was recorded with the county and then they had to file it, or it was filed over the top of another claim, or it was just an outright scam. And so we really want to caution folks about buying mining claims on the internet because I'm going to say the vast majority of them aren't worth it. And, you know, if they were extremely, extremely valuable, why would the person be selling it? I don't know. You know, in some cases, I'm sure people probably need the money for, you know, medical or whatever reasons. And that's perfectly understandable. But gosh, I'm just telling you guys, we deal in a lot of different states in the Western United States that people have bought basically scams. So, all right. So in the beginning here, there's 19 states, and they're almost all Western United States states that you can file a federal mining claim in. And the process is created from the original mining grants that date back to the 1800s. So 1866, 1870, and 1872. And America back then was really trying to expand. It was trying to grow, and it was trying to grow economically. And so they thought a lot about the miners, and they wanted to give the miners a lot of self power to be able to expand the United States and to expand the West. So they passed all of these different mining acts that gave the miners the rights. And these are grants, folks. They're not normal laws where Congress will pass a law and then later they can come and change it or amend it or do all these other things. With these specific grants, it's very, very difficult for them to do that. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you actually two examples of that. One is the Indian land grants. That's a grant. Can you imagine what would happen if Congress just all of a sudden came out, or Mr. Biden came out and said, you know what, with the stroke of a pen, I'm just going to take this away? Well, you would probably have chaos. So,
Oh yeah.
that's an example of that. Forgot what the second one was, but anyway, so I thought I had it. Anyway, so I'm racing along here. So what we're going to try to do here is really to kind of get into the first initial steps. We're going to take a big step over the research that has to be done on the MLRS system and focus very specifically on the steps that it takes after that. So the first thing that you have to do is determine if the land is open. And for the sake of moving forward here, we're going to say that you have already done that. And it's time to go out to the ground, whatever creek, river, lake, whatever mountain that you want to go and prospect. And the very first thing that you have to do when you go out in the field is you have to make a valuable mineral discovery. So what's a valuable mineral discovery? Well, it just so happens that is a valuable mineral discovery. If you find rocks like that you can make into things like this, that's a valuable mineral discovery. It doesn't. I just had to show you some eye candy just to Here, we got another one. This is a good one too. So anyway, so it can be gold, it can be palladium, it can be whatever those minerals as they are described by the federal government. Jerry, give them an example of some different things.
Well, the BLM calls them locatable minerals, mostly is what we deal with, and they're the precious metals, the silver, the gold, the platinums, but a lot of other things fall into the category too. The rare earths now are really big. The rare earths are locatable minerals, so in theory, you can file a mining claim on one of those areas as well. You can even file on gem materials. A lot of gem materials would fall into the category as well.
Some things don't. Like I remember dealing with a guy that had an obsidian. He tried to file a claim on obsidian. Is not a locatable mineral.
Right.
So there's basically, what is there, 3 or 4 categories. So there's a placer claim, which is, like a creek or a river deposit or a creek deposit, something that has been broken down out of a lode source and washed down and it's on the surface. Placer is a surface mining. Then there's lode mining, and I want to make sure that you guys understand the spelling is LODE, not LOAD. We see that all the time. A lode is what happened when Mr. Biden went over in front of the Queen. That's what a lode is in underwear. So there's a big difference between load and load. But so then there's a mill site, and isn't there one other, Jerry?
There's tunnel site as well, yeah.
Tunnel site, okay.
But
so
rarely used.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a tunnel site, but the mill site does get used, and that's typically 5 acres, and it's an area that you would set up your crushing equipment, water recirculation or whatever it is for the load aspect. So, but the the predominant number, actually, I think that there's probably pretty close to 50-50, isn't it, Jerry? Load to placer?
Yeah, depending on the state, California has more placer, but like Nevada would have more load
Right.
claims.
Okay. So, and this all applies now. A load claim, you're restricted to one size, and that's 20.6 acres. And with a mill site, I believe it's restricted to 5 acres. Now, with
Right.
a placer, you can go from 20, 40, all the way up to 160. And as you go up incrementally, for each 20 acres, you need what they call a signature. And that is, there has to be one valid American United States citizen, because they're the only ones that can own mining claims. And I don't even want to get into that mess because we've dealt with foreign entities down in Arizona a number of years ago. BLM is so screwed up, guys. They'll let just about anybody file a mining claim without even following the law. And they're in California, they're 7 years behind in their data entry, and that is checking land status. 7 years behind. It really begs the question of what the hell do we pay these people for? They're 7 years behind. So, to give you an example, I've got a mining claim that I filed in 2014, I want to say it is. And they show it as filed, but not active and not valid because they literally haven't done a 5-minute clerical task of actually checking the land status, and that's their job. So it's really confounding. So anyway, so let's get into this whole aspect of the very first step here, and that is to go out and make a valuable mineral discovery. So what that means, guys, is that you actually have to go out and mine the claim and dig and run a sluice and pan and test ore or whatever it is, test a lode outcropping of quartz and crush it, and then it actually do they do any there's no tests out there anymore, Jerry, as far as commercial viability, to my knowledge. I mean, I know that that's been challenged, but
Yeah, well, each mine would be would be considered differently because if you're having to haul 100,000 tons of ore off site to be milled, you got transportation costs. So that's it's the prudent man test is what they call it. Would a
that's what it
prudent
is.
man expend the money and time and energy with the reasonable expectation that that there will be a profit in the end? So it's going to be different for every mine.
Well, and most people go out, and they may not, I'm going to say the vast majority of folks don't mine for a living like what
Right.
we do. And, to where, if they go out and they find $25 worth of gold or, a gram or two in a weekend, and they're going to be pretty elated about that. And that's still what would pass the prudent man test if you're not expending a lot
Sure.
of resources and money and things like that to actually prove a mining claim.
Exactly.
So,
This small scale miner has very small expenses, so you don't have to find a lot to pass that test.
yeah. A couple of things that I want to just mention here is we're going to cover things like claim jumping and the legal way to go about dealing with that. We deal a lot with that. We're going to talk about road closures and things of that nature. So, I guess we might as well just mention that now, and that is with these original mining grants that we were talking about, is they granted you fundamental rights. And that is when you file a mining claim, it's actually supposed to withdraw that from the public domain. And one thing that we learned from a close buddy of ours, Kirby Jackson, who's probably the best legal mind that I know of when it comes to mining, is that there's a number of different cases, and some of these have gone all the way to the Supreme Court, that state that the land is actually withdrawn and it's real property in every sense of the word. And I think Sandra Day O'Connor was the one, I want to say. No, she did the soup pop theory. Anyway, one of It was either a district court or it was the Supreme Court that said that. And so that doesn't give you the right to build a home on that because you're not able to patent a non-patented mining claim anymore. That was taken away under the Clinton administration in the early 90s. So you can't build a house on it. You could build structures, but you would have to do plans of operations either with the BLM or the Forest Service. But it does give you a fundamental right of access, meaning that when they passed the Federal Land Policy Management Act of 1976, October of 1976, they decided, and that was something that Congress passed, that, you know what, any roads that are built after 1976, the government can choose to close them. But they put in there in black and white language in the FLPMA Act that this in no way affects RS 2477, which is a subset of the 1872 mining grant. So they can't impact any of those roads that were built prior to 1976. And I'll give you an example. Is we just helped a miner that he's got a load claim, and it's a really, really good one, as a matter of fact. Anyway, he found an aerial photograph of the early 1950s of the load mine, and there was a road that he had no idea even existed there. And it was a lot easier access than the way he was accessing the mine now. And so by showing that road, it allowed us to do some research and then find an older map that actually showed that on a map from like 1930 or whatever. That was presented to the regulatory authority over that particular area, which was the Forest Service. That was shown to them and the dates and everything else. And, you know, we just said, look, this is an RS 2477 road. And they went, oh, okay, you're right. So now that miner is being allowed to take a bulldozer in there and actually doze that road back open all the way to the top of his mine. Much better access. So the point I'm trying to make here is those mining grants were so powerful that even though they passed FLPMA that gives the government all these incredible powers nowadays, it doesn't impact the things that were grandfathered in as part of the original mining grants, which is really cool. So, and if you look at, there's a really good thing that you can Google. As a matter of fact, I think we've got it up on our webpage as well. And that is, if you're dealing with the Forest Service as far as access goes on a mining claim, 2813.14 of the USFS manual, and that's the mining manual. We call it the 2800 manual. So if you went to Google and you typed in USFS 2800 manual and hit enter, it will pull up this PDF of all of the different things that the Forest Service can and can't do as they relate to mining claims. And as a part of that, 2813.14 states that the Forest Service cannot cause an undue burden for the miner, to be able to access his or her mining claim. And so they have to provide you reasonable access. So if they're trying to tell you that they're going to gate your road and you can't get into your mining claim, it's fundamentally illegal and you could sue them. So the problem, and Jere and I were talking about this earlier, the problem is, guys, with this is you got to understand a lot has changed in government over the last 20 years, where the government, and I just go back personally 20 years ago, I didn't think the same way that I do now about Forest Service or BLM or the government, big bloated government, than the way I do now, because back then you kind of got to work with these guys and they were reasonable, and you know, you really didn't have the problems that we have here. Now you've got all these political ideologies and stuff, and there's no accountability. So, I mean, we get more complaints from people being locked and blocked from their mining claims than we do any other type of complaint in the entire country. That's the most complaints that we get. And so the government has an unlimited amount of money that is your taxpayer money that they will use to fight you, to try to, legitimize the reason why they're illegally locking and blocking you from your mining claim. So while we talk about these legal remedies and that you can sue them and you can win, and there's case history and case precedent and all this other stuff that really shows that you're right, just know this is that a lot of times the government is going to say, I don't really give a crap. We're going to drag this guy through court for 2.5 years. And it's going to cost you, $100,000. So while it's easy to say, well, just sue them, you have to understand what it costs to sue the government and things like that. And there's other avenues, things that we're learning that AMRA is going to probably be talking about here pretty soon on our media platforms. But
and
that
that's
may help people that don't have the funds. Go ahead, Jere.
And that's one of the things that I kind of wanted to chime in on. You're not only fighting the government in different states, you're also fighting, you're fighting multiple different businesses that own massive amounts of land. And sometimes, just as the case with James, you're not fighting against the government at this point. Now you're fighting against this forestry company who has unlimited amounts of money. So, I'm sure you could go as far as you could with however much money you have, but they have unlimited amount of money, and it could be dragged out for years and years and years. And as far as a placer claim goes, compared to maybe a load claim, obviously see what kind of options you have, but it's kind of a tough situation. For a guy like me or a guy like James or a guy, that has a couple of simple placer claims, and you're going up against a giant in the industry. I'm not going to name any names specifically. That could be not only dragged out for years, but I mean, that could drain your wallet completely if you really went ahead with it.
You mean companies with initials just like what my name is?
Yeah, so you see that all the time, and it's an unfortunate circumstance because you really want to do the most you can, as far as reaching out to them and whatnot. But at the end of the day, like you were saying earlier, when the companies are as big as they are and they have unlimited amount of money, there's it's kind of, I mean, I don't want to say it indefinitely, but it's kind of like, you're going to take a loss, unless you really want to go ahead with it and spend, what you have in your bank account fighting it. I mean, it's pretty tough situation.
Well, I can give you a really good example here, and that is in Idaho, folks up in northern Idaho on the South Fork of the Clearwater. We were contacted back in 2014 by a handful of suction dredgers, and the EPA had come in working with the just tyrannical Forest Service up there, telling the miners that they couldn't legally dredge their mining claims anymore. And while lawsuits could have been filed, nobody had the money actually to do that. So the only recourse really that there was to go and challenge that. And I mean by challenging it, going up there and going, you know what, just come and arrest me or cite me or do whatever you feel that you think that you have the authority to. Then you can get them into a court environment and really make a difference that way. Well, that's exactly what I did. I went up there and dredged and showed all of these miners that you can stand up to the EPA. Now, what that turned into was, I mean, the Forest Service was doing anything and everything they could do to shut us down, from saying that we had gas cans stored too close to the river to saying that you couldn't tie a rope from your dredge over to a tree to hold your dredge in place because the rafters had to be able to come through, which there were no rafters at all. And not only that, is in the original mining grants as well as Idaho state law, the miners take precedence over everything. And so the only recourse really that you have at those points is to stand up to that tyranny. And it's no different than really what you see going on in Canada with the truckers going and, making this convoy that's 45 miles long, or the timber guys up in Oregon, taking all the log trucks for 25 miles and circling the Capitol. That's how you protest that kind of stuff. But until there is real accountability within these agencies, guys, you're really going to have a difficult time suing them because they have no fear. They don't worry about losing their job. They don't worry about getting sued individually. And then I know a lot of the listeners here probably aren't aware of this. We actually came up with a solution to that problem a couple of years ago when Trump was in office. And it was actually Jerry's wife, Connie, who is our COO of AMRA. Is we were down in LA at a gold show, and we're all staying in this little house. And we were talking about how the Forest Service is just out of control. And not all of them are bad guys. There's really good people within the Forest Service. So don't think that they're all crappy. They're not. But there are people within the Forest Service, and a lot of them in Montana, that just don't give a crap about the miners. And they're going to do anything and everything that they can do to keep you from mining because it's in their blood. It's just to oppose this. It's their political ideology. And since there's no ramifications, nothing's going to stop them. So anyway, Connie was reading through the Veterans Administration Accountability Act that Trump passed. I don't know what year it was, 2018 or 17. And back then, the VA was out of control, and they were mistreating the veterans that were going in for medical conditions and everything else. And it was really, really bad. And so the Republicans passed this bill that stated that if you work in the VA and you mistreat a veteran, or you are doing things outside the scope and course of your employment, or you're doing things illegally, you will be fired, you will be prosecuted, you lose your pension, and you can never work in government again. And they passed that. And what was really remarkable is in like the first 6 months or 8 months or whatever it was, they fired, 6,000 employees or some crazy number. Well, what happened is that changed the culture within the veterans, the VA, and it all stopped. So Connie came up with this brilliant idea, and this is pre-China virus, that, what if we take the Veterans Administration and cross that out, make some modifications, put United States Forest Service and the BLM in there, and let's take it to Congress in Washington, D.C., and let's see if we can pass this. So we wrote it up, we sent it off, and we had a United States Senator we were working with, and one of his senior staff, and they loved it. And we had a trip slated, Jerry and I. We actually even got Jerry a new suit because his was from like probably had bell bottoms. Anyway, ruffled shirt, But anyway, so we were slated to fly over there. I want to say February 13th or something like that of 2020. We had meetings set up with the Department of Interior, with Mark Meadows, that was Trump's chief of staff, all these senators and everything like that. And it had bipartisan support. 3 days. So we were supposed to fly out on Tuesday. 3 days before we were to fly out, it was Friday. I remember getting a phone call saying, hey, Nancy Pelosi just shut down Washington, D.C. So we never got to introduce that as a bill and to pass that because the rest is history. They closed down Washington, D.C. really until after the 2021 election and 2020 election. And but we still have that. And that's a solution, guys, that if the Republicans, and granted, we're not Republicans or Democrats because we really don't like hardly any politicians because they're all crooks. But anyway, we will bring that back up if we really get into a conservative government again that cares about the people. We'll take that bill back to DC and see if we can't get it passed. Because once you start firing some of these people, and believe me, we have evidence enough on enough of these guys probably to fire 30 of them right now. But they don't do anything because it's like the fox guarding the hen house. You file complaints out of Missoula, Montana for things that happen in Idaho or in Arizona or wherever it is, and they just go, oh, we don't see anything wrong here. Well, the guy is doing this and it's illegal. It's actually a felony. Well, we don't see that. So until you can get those people out of office and actually have somebody enforce this, then you're going to really have these problems. So we want you to understand that if you filed a lawsuit under today's environment, it's going to be significant challenges. And that's not even mentioning the fact that you've got federal judges out there that are political ideologues just like anybody else, and they don't care about the rule of law. They don't care about the letter of the law, and they're going to go with their political beliefs. And believe me, guys, I know that firsthand because I am being sued in northern Idaho by an environmental group, a radical environmental group, because I dredged on a legal mining claim with a legal, valid Idaho dredge permit. And they're claiming that I destroyed their fish habitat. So and we had a judge actually rule in their favor because it's not about the truth or the facts. It's about political ideology. So we just want to caution you folks out there. If you think, oh, hell, I'll go and hire an attorney. Well, first of all, there's not very many decent mining attorneys out there. We only know of one handful in the entire country that we would actually recommend. There's just not that many of them out there, and it's really expensive. So just keep that in mind. So again, guys, if you've got questions, I want you to send them to Jaren, but let's go ahead and go through this process again. So let's go back to the point where you've determined that you've got ground that is open to mineral entry. It's in the public domain, and now you're going to go out and mine it. And let's take a placer claim for an example. So you're going to go down, you're going to dig out some cracks and pan and everything like that, and you find some decent gold. You decide at that point, okay, hey, I want to file a mining claim. Well, don't just isolate it to one tiny little spot that you're mining. Mine up and down whatever area is open, the entire area. And that may take a weekend, or it may take 2 weekends, it may take a month. But you know what? You need to find where the best valuable mineral discovery is, because when Obama changed that stuff back in 2012, if you find the best gold in a 20-acre spot, file on that 20 acres, because like I say, it's $1,300 to file a 160-acre mining claim, not to mention the fact that here in California, you have to pay property taxes on it. So that should tell you something about a mining claim as well. It's recognized as real property in the state of California because they charge you property tax. But then California went one step beyond, and they passed, what was that, SB1, Jerry? They passed, yep. I think it was SB1.
Or 2.
SB2. Anyway, what that is that every single year that you have to do your paperwork and record anything with the county as it relates to property, you have to pay a $75 fee. So in addition to the fees that you have to pay at BLM and the recording fees at the county, now you have to pay an additional $75. And all I'm trying to do is get you guys to understand how incrementally, if you go up on these size of claims, that it can get quite costly. So you've determined now, okay, and just for sake of argument, we're going to say that you've determined that this, let's make it a 60-acre claim. You found 60 acres in Blue Creek in Tuolumne County, California. That is extremely rich. It's got really good gold. You found it in all 60 acres, and you want to file that mining claim in that. So that 60 acres, you have to divide by 20. Okay, so 60 divided by 20 is 3. So you need 3 signatures on that mining claim. So I'm going to take Jerry. No, we don't like Jaren. So we'll take. So Jerry,
anybody else,
Jaren and I would actually own the mining claim, and we'll take you through that process of the paperwork. But the one thing, and this is kind of the things that we've learned over the years, guys, is as a matter of fact, we've probably helped 5 people just in the last 6 months that filed mining claims with buddies or friends of a friend because they needed an extra name on the claim, and then they've either decided to sell the claim, or they want to mine it in a particular way or do a plan of operations or whatever it is, that because they have a bad guy basically on the paperwork on the mining claim, their hands are tied. And let's say that all three of us had this mining claim, and I go, hey, I want to sell the mining claim. It's really rich. We can sell it for $100,000. We'll split it three ways. And Jaron wants to sell, I want to sell, and Jerry says no. We can't actually sell that claim unless Jerry participates in that legal binding sales contract. So Jerry could buy us out, but if he just says, no, I don't want to sell it, and I'm not going to let you, there really isn't much recourse for you to do. You could drag him through court. You're going to spend more money in legal fees. The only people that are ever going to get rich are the attorneys, not you. Right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
So I guess a bit of advice that we would give you would be to make it as small of a claim as you can that still covers the deposit that you're really truly after, if that makes sense. So if you've made your valuable mineral discovery, you have to then put up a monument. And that doesn't mean that you have to haul in concrete and build some kind of display. It can be as simple as, driving a post in the ground. We prefer actually to use stacked rocks and, relatively close to wherever you found the deposit. And then, because everybody's got smartphones now, we encourage you that if you're going to go out and you're going to actually put up a monument that is your mineral discovery, is stop by any store on the way and get a today's newspaper. So today is what, the 27th of January 2022, is put up your stacked rocks and hold up the newspaper and take a picture of that so it has today's date with your monument. Guys, we deal a lot with claim disputes. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you a story here about a guy that top filed me and the extremes that I had to go through. And the guy still has not gone away, and it's been years. But anyway, when you get into those top filing issues, it's important that you follow these steps to a T, because really what it boils down to is the location date. Jerry, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it in the law they always refer to it as the senior locator, and all that means is whoever filed the mining claim, or let me go back and say, whoever has the earlier location date has the rights to the mineral. And that only makes sense. Of course, if you come along later and file on top of somebody, you don't have any rights. That's just common sense, and that's the way the mining law works. So it goes back to the location date on your paperwork, the day you file, the day you filed with the county, and that's what it all hinges off of with senior locators. And the senior locator is the only one that has rights to the minerals in the ground.
We had one case I can remember. I don't remember the guy's name, but it boiled down to, he had gone out and he'd found this creek that was really, really rich, and he blabbed about it on Facebook. Well, somebody figured out where he was at, and so went in. Actually, I do remember who it was now, but anyway, he had filed the mining claim in the county, and the guy that figured it out wrote out the paperwork without even actually going to the claim. Right. Went and recorded it that same afternoon. So when you looked at the two paperwork, and then the top filer actually got to BLM before the original locator, and so it got into this dispute where you had the top filer going, "Oh, I recorded it before him when he was in the county." And lo and behold, what had happened is the county actually, when you submit all of those papers, it goes through the data entry. Whichever one was filed when they open up, that one gets entered first. And there's a digital record of that. So the original locator was able to say, hey, I actually recorded this in the county 3 hours and 17 minutes prior to when the other guy went there.
Right.
And he also had a picture of the monument with the newspaper thing in it. And so that's the senior locator. It doesn't matter if you actually pay for the claim at BLM after the fact. It's whoever files in the county first. And that can come down to a matter of minutes or hours. And it's a really good idea, guys. If you're finding really good stuff, show pictures of it, but certainly don't tell anybody where it's at, and don't take a picture with the freaking lookout in the background so they can go, oh, I know where that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the things that we were talking about earlier. Was we were talking about the monument, and the different types of things. I know it varies per state. We're not going to get into all that, but I kind of wanted to ask Jere, as far as the NOI goes, can you kind of speak a little bit on that NOI subject as far as that goes?
Yeah. Now, what you're referring to you're in Montana, so it's referred to in Montana as a notice of intent to locate. In California, we refer to that document as the location notice. Many other states, Arizona is a location notice, but anyway, it's a technicality in what you're calling it. So because I'm used to calling it a location notice, that's what I'll call it.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, so don't get that confused. It's the same paperwork, it's the same process, and once you find your valuable mineral discovery, you need to locate the mining claim, and that's an action. That's the day that you fill out the form and you put it on your monument, like Shannon was talking earlier, and then you take that paperwork and you go down and you put your corner posts up, and then you take that paperwork down and you file it at county. That's your location date. That's your notice of intent to locate.
So just to reiterate for everybody watching, so you have found your claim that you want to claim, obviously. And then I kind of wanted to touch on the Four Corners subject.
Right.
So you figured out, okay, I'm going to claim this 20-acre parcel here, right? So with doing your proper paperwork, that day before you get all the paperwork done, that day you're able to go out and put your Four Corners in, correct?
Yeah, the day you put your corners in, your posts in, your monuments in is called your location date. It's the date you put as your location date on all the forms, and you can do a valuable mineral discovery earlier than that and put an initial monument up. But the official location date is the day that you fill out the paperwork and put it there on the claim. You mark your corners so that you have some kind of record of where your boundaries are. And we talked about this earlier. There is varying laws state to state, but I can't say enough how valuable having corners up, because if you have a neighboring a claimant next to you and you have a claim dispute on where the boundary is, it's a lot easier to handle that kind of situation if there's corner markers up. You can say, look, my corner marker's right here to right here, that's the border. If you locate it just by legal description, it gets fuzzy. You end up having to hire a surveyor to come out there and tell you exactly where the boundary is.
Right. So we have a question here real quick. This one's for Shannon. It says, so I want to know that the land will produce enough to pay for fees and overhead. So would an assay be worth doing before even considering filing?
Well, it sounds like that is more of a load question. I mean, assays typically really pertain to a load mine. And yes, you know, so let's separate it out this way. With a placer mine, it's really, really difficult to assay a placer unless you're doing some type of a significant drill pattern where you're drilling down all the way to bedrock and you're testing each holes. That's really how you would assay a placer. With a load is you're going to go to whatever the ore body is and take samples of that. That's what this stuff is here. This is load ore, which is obviously extremely high grade stuff. And you're going to take what an assay is, for those that don't know, is everything is discerned in what they call OPT, ounces per ton. And that is, if we end up with, let's say, 20 pounds of this rock, and we crush that into a fine powder, and then we pan that out, we can multiply that, times 100 and weigh up the gold and multiply that times 100, and that gets us to a ton. And it'll tell you how many ounces per ton that ore is actually running. And a decent load mine, is a 1/2 ounce per ton, 3/4 ounce per ton, or in cases like this stuff runs upwards of 65 ounces per ton, which is almost unheard of in the world. But in order to do an assay, there's a couple of different types. And I'm fortunate enough that Jerry is my mining partner, and he has a kiln, and he has the ability to actually fire this stuff. So, Jerry, you want to just kind of tell everybody what that process is, and then we'll circle back to it, and we'll talk about whether or not it should be viable or not.
Yeah, a fire assay, which I think is mostly what you can actually do an assay in many different ways. And I think this question kind of circles around how much testing should you do? An assay is a form of a test. You could do bulk sample testing, which would be more accurate, because especially in a placer deposit, because it's more material to run, the better average you're going to have, or you better look at what the average is. But a fire assay is it takes a 30 grams of sample, and that's called an assay ton. So, and all that means is that's a representative sample of your ore. You fire it with fluxes. And
that's completely crushed down, though, into a fine powder. Okay.
Correct. And you have a collector metal, usually lead. And what the fluxes and everything do is they get all the gold in that sample to collect in the collector metal, in this case lead. Then you go into a second firing with that lead button, and it removes the lead out of it, and you're left with just a bead of precious metal, platinums, silvers, and golds. And what it does, it for every millimeter that bead is, that's how many ounces per ton the ore will be. And that's why you use 30 grams, because the math works out that way, and in short. And so if you got 1 millimeter bead, then that's 1 ounce per ton. If you have a 1/2 millimeter bead, that's a 1/2 ounce per ton. So milligram, excuse me, not millimeter, milligram. It's a weight issue, not a measurement issue.
I was going to say, buddy.
No. That's a bit huge difference. So it's a milligram. So it's just an easy way to take a sample and boil it down to its base and get it 1 ounce per ton out of it.
So I know of a couple of different guys we've used. This is before Jerry got his system operational. We used a guy, his name is Chris Christofferson, up in Idaho, and he's really good. I think he only charged like $75 for a sample. I know there's a couple of guys here in California that does it as well, and it's probably $75 to $100. By the way, I don't paint my fingernails.
Yes, you do.
Jerry smashed my finger when we were working on the bulldozer, and I'm losing that nail, so it's not.
He got it in the way.
I'm not going gothic.
Yes, he is.
Yeah,
Yes, he is.
whatever. So anyway, so as far as assays go on load, absolutely. Any load mine that we've ever picked up or that we have or working or anything like that, it all boils down to that's all we are thinking about initially is taking sample after sample after sample after sample. And I'll give you a really good example. So we have this mine. We've named it the Stacy Nicole after our very own Stacy. She's our operations manager. We found this mine. I'd been walking by this at it for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, and I'd never even been in this mine in some very remote area. Well, we finally decided that we were going to go in there one day, and we were on our way to another mining operation that, oh, hell, we were dredging, whatever. So, yeah, it was outside of Oslo, Norway, though, not California.
I was swimming.
Yes, swimming. So, anyway, so Don went in there and we were like, oh crap, look at all of this. This is some really extensive workings. There were tunnels going everywhere. There was a giant ballroom. And anyway, so Don scooped up a bunch, and all we had was literally a plastic grocery bag that I had my lunch in that I handed, and he swept some of this stuff kind of off the floor. And then we went in and to the equipment. And while I was underwater swimming, just sniping
with the fishes.
Anyway, with a
swimming.
Anyway, while we were doing that, Don panned this out, and I remember popping my head out, and Don's standing there with a great big smile, pointing at the pan, and I'm like, "Let's see, panning out cracks." I completely forgot he had taken those samples. Well, anyway, there was this huge smile of ultrafine gold in the pan. We're like, "Holy crap!" So that changed the whole perspective. So I don't remember, it was a week or so later, we decided to go in with sandbags, with our rock hammers, with lights and everything else like that, with air monitors, make sure that the air was safe and et cetera. We went in and we took 6 samples, Jerry.
Yeah.
We took a Sharpie and we actually labeled where we thought the most mineralized area inside the mine was. We put a number, wrote it in Sharpie in the wall, and took a sample. And it was probably 20 or 30 pounds each sample, maybe a little bit more. And then we hauled those 6 samples all the way back to the shop, and we crushed those in our little portable mill. It's a small mill and a very small 3-inch jaw crusher. And anyway, we pulverized it. And I remember Jerry was running the damn mill, and I was over, and I would pan out a sample, and then Don would pan out, and then Jerry would pan out, and we got to, I don't remember what sample number was. I think it was 5.
do. It was 4.
4? So we get to, sample number 1, sample number 2, and that's basically a form of assay, like what the question was.
Sure.
And, it was not bad, but it wasn't anything because it was so remote. It wasn't really worth us taking a ton of material and trying to figure out how the hell we're going to haul this out of here in quads, because hauling it out by the ton on a four-wheeler is pretty difficult to do. So we get to number 4, and I don't remember who panned it out, but it was like, oh my God. We all walk over and look, and holy crap, the freaking pan was loaded full of gold.
Wow.
And it was really odd because the shaft, the adit goes in and it goes up, and there's stopes, and I mean all kinds of crap going on, and there are all kinds of things going on. Some of it was flooded, and anyway, and there was track, and anyway, this was right inside the opening. I mean, 20 feet from the opening, just this little side tunnel that had some really weird stacked rock, didn't even make any sense. And so we thought, well, holy crap, this stuff is running like 5 ounces per ton, 6 ounces per ton. That's really rich. So I went back in with another couple of friends, and we took out a significant sample at that point. We took out about 100 pounds and crushed it, and there was 2 ounces in it. So that's why sampling and assaying, if you're going to do any type of load mining, is absolutely crucial. But anyway, and I don't want to really get into the weeds on the whole assaying thing, but if you're going to be a load miner, assaying is your best friend, because load mining is really expensive to do, not to actually do the process. It's to get the equipment and get an operational mill and mill site. That's what's so expensive. To
So
get a jaw crusher and an impact mill, or you're going to run a ball mill, and then you got to have some type of a collection system. And like us, we have to recirculate our water, and so we've got water pumps, and I mean, we've got a jaw crusher, we've got a giant impact mill, we have two what they call Knudsen's bowls, or similar to Neff bowls. They're reverse centrifuges. Then we run that to a dump hopper, to another tank that holds the water, and we recirc this whole system. Well, we can run about 10 tons a day, but in order to build something like that, guys, you're talking about a lot of money. So, and the wear and tear that goes on this equipment, even though we're using a product called Mangaloy in our impact mill, where it's some of the hardest metal known to man, that as it spins, it actually gets harder as it hits the quartz. But even with that Mangaloy, we'll go 10 tons and we got to change out the heads, and they have to be hard faced. So you can't really run a lot of this equipment without really doing some damage to, your equipment itself. So you have to run high grade, or you're going to lose money.
So that's, yeah. So it'd probably not be a good idea to assay as far as the placer goes. Then you're putting in, you're putting an investment in that, is definitely going to be a while before you get a return on it, I'm assuming.
Yeah. No, you definitely want to sample your placer, but it's a different process rather than the fire assay.
Yeah, right. I mean, if you were, Parker up in Alaska, they do a lot of drill patterns and drills where they'll drill all the way down to bedrock, and they'll sample those holes, and they'll do a specific pattern layout of whatever 100 acres that they're trying to do, and it'll determine if there was any type of a pay streak, an ancient tertiary channel, or whatever it is. That'll show up in those drill samples, but good gosh, guys, that's really expensive to do. So it probably it's hard to assay a placer.
Right. And like you said, it varies, I'd imagine. If you had a simple 20-acre placer, you'd probably be better off testing that 20 acres than you would be going through with a full assay, right?
Right.
Exactly. And the thing is, and I don't really want to spend a lot of time on this, but we've done some videos, and they're on AMRA's YouTube page. It's under American Mining Rights, about what we call a series called Thinking Outside the Creek. And that is the bench placers, because everybody that came from the 1849 all the way to today, the first place that they go is right to the creek where the water is. And it may be these benches that are out of there that are untouched. And believe me, we found a lot of benches over the last 20 years that were literally virgin ground, that hold ounces and ounces, if not pounds of gold, that nobody ever touched. They always go to the damn creek. So think about those bench placers, because that creek or river, it eroded to the level that it is now. That's, it just did that through erosion process. And at some time it was way up here. Another thing to think about is the old timers when they came, and we've got a claim that we just sent the girls from Frozen Gold, the TV show. They're AMRA members. We sent them out to one of our claims that we know for fact now that in 1853, some miners came in and they found really good gold, small, but they found a lot of it right in the middle of the creek. So they pulled all the material out of the creek, and they built this mound that went along the edge of the creek right there. And so over the subsequent century and a half since then, other people have came and mined. Somebody dug a ditch, but they left that mound running right along the edge of the creek. Well, we talk about that is that think about that process. So if Jared and I come in 1853, we dig it out, we throw it on the bank, we're burying virgin ground of where the creek used to be.
Yep.
Unless somebody comes in and moves their tailing pile and then digs below that, that virgin ground is still there. All we did was punch into the bank, found virgin ground, and there was all kinds of gold. And that's where we sent the girls. And it's still there. It's, any of the AMRA members can go and dig it. But so that's something that you got to think outside the box. Just because you go to a creek and you dig out a crack, you're only going to find the flood gold most likely, because it's probably been mined over and over again. So think about that kind of stuff.
Well, Shannon and Jerry, I think we go on a 5-minute break real quick. That way we could use the restroom. It looks like we're about an hour in. I do see one more question that I'd like to ask that was kind of, it's off topic, or should I say further into our podcast. But I did have a question here that it says, let's see if I could find it here and pull it up. Let's see. Okay, here we go, right here. Should I be worried that my claim I filed a year ago still says filed instead of active?
Welcome to the BLM and the new MLRS system.
Let me give you some numbers as far as that goes. And it's something, by the way, Jerry, I forgot to tell you, that gal that we talked about that we contacted a year and a half ago that kind of busted this all well, she works for BLM. She's the one that told us that they were 7 years behind.
Wow.
We are now working with the United States Senator trying to bring attention to this. None of this is going to change really until we have a political change at the highest level.
Higher level, yep.
Yeah, and I don't really want to get into the weeds on that. No, it doesn't affect your claim, although I think personally, I think that it exposes the government to some liability, because here I filed this claim in 2014. I've been paying property taxes on it. I've been, paying fees and recording and everything like that. If they invalidate my claim that they should have done 4 days after I filed it in 2014, the freaking government owes me all the money that I've paid over the years for that claim that they should have invalidated then. So if they invalidate it now and I'm out thousands of dollars, I want my damn money back.
Well, it opens up a whole nother topic, and we're going to be getting into this when we get into the MLRS. The fancy new map they have on MLRS doesn't show those claims that are filed either. So if you go in and look at your research, you start doing your research and say, oh, look, this area doesn't have any claims in it. But somebody filed a claim a year ago, 2 years ago, and it's still in the filed status. It's not going to be on their fancy map. So you're top filing somebody without even knowing it. Right. So we're going to get into all kinds of that in the next one when we're talking specifically about the MLRS. But it's a major problem. And unfortunately, the research falls to the person filing the claim. So, and no, I've got claims that are years old. They got, just as Shannon, and that once they switch to the MLRS system, the status of them changed as well. They were active, and because the land status wasn't checked when this change happened to MLRS, they got changed to filed, and it's a huge problem. And
let me ask you a simple question, Jerry. If you worked at BLM, knowing what you know on the MLRS system, how long would it take you to check land status on a claim that I filed?
Oh, it's not long. It's
give me a time.
Max,
5 minutes?
Max 10 minutes. Yeah. No, it's not long.
So the numbers that I told you guys I was going to give you, there's 65,000 mining claims that the BLM lady told us that were impacted by them being behind in their so-called tasks that they're supposed to be responsible for. That's unacceptable. You can't use the China virus as an excuse, because this goes back 7 years. That's 5 years before the virus. So what do we pay these people for?
Right.
So, I mean, everybody that is watching this, I would encourage you to contact your congressman or congresswoman and go, what the hell?
Yeah.
Make them do something.
No, that sounds like a good plan for all the folks watching right now. Let's go ahead and jump in a 5-minute break real quick. That way everybody can grab a beverage, use the restroom, and then we'll jump back into the second part of the series. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, guys. Welcome back, everybody, to the first part of the series with Shannon Poe and Jere Clements. The one thing that I forgot to ask, and I'm sure all the folks that are watching right now, I'll go ahead and ask this question, and we'll get moving with the second part of the series. Was if your claim status is showing filed and not showing active, such as that question. Are you still legally able to go out on your claim and quote unquote do your due? Are you still
Yes.
able to do that?
Yes, and
Absolutely.
here's why, is because you have followed and you've met all of the conditional requirements as per federal law. So,
Somebody we
once
know very well has a plan of operation on a claim that's in the filed status. So yes, you certainly can.
Perfect. Good deal. Well, I figured I'd clear that up real quick. I'm sure that's one of those important questions that a lot of folks have. And just for clarification, that way they feel legal and feel okay to be able to go on their claim if it's still in the file status. I mean, it would be a different situation, like Shannon was saying, with with it going from active for however many years to when they switch to going back to filing, it'd be a different ball game. Obviously, like you said, it'd still be legal, but for the folks that have filed and it's been sitting there for a year, however many months, they're still legal and able to get out there and get her done.
Yep, for sure.
Good
California
deal.
is the worst state in the union as far as how far they are behind. And like I said, they're over 7 years here in California. In Arizona, I think at the last time that we checked, they were about between 6 and 9 months. Idaho was wasn't very far behind at all. Montana was pretty much on track. So it's really isolated down to wherever it is. Oregon and Washington, those two states, the claims are filed out of Portland, and they were like a year and a half, and they're probably 2 years behind now because of the China virus. So it doesn't change anything legally as far as what you can and can't do. It just opens up a can of worms that, like Jere was describing, is that people may think that the land is open for mineral
Right.
entry and that there's no mining claim on it if they use this specific map on the MLRS,
Right.
and that somebody could top file. And that's one of the things that we're going to go into, but I'm making a note of that. But what I wanted to also, I kind of backtracking a little bit, really, and I should have said this in the beginning. So, what the three of us have talked about on here is we're going to take this video series that we do on this topic, and then I'm going to take all of this video, all this raw video that we're shooting right now, I'm going to turn that into a YouTube series that we're going to make available. So, it'll be specifically those steps that you have to take in the order that they have to be done. So while we're going to do the MLRS thing next week, in the YouTube video that we create, we're going to talk about this is the process, and then boom, get right into that to determine that. And then we'll get into the steps of making a valuable mineral discovery, putting up monuments, recording with the county, filing the claim with BLM, et cetera, et cetera. So we will be producing that. You're talking about a lot of editing, guys. It's not going to happen, 3 days after we get done shooting this series. It's probably going to be a couple of weeks after that. But we are going to make it available, and it's something that is really long overdue. So anyway, we're going to do that, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to it. Not the editing portion, but
never the editing. That is always
editing really sucks.
Yes, it does.
So we might as well talk a little bit about top filing, because that seemed to be whoever the questioner was had concerns with, at least partially, is top filing. So what happens when somebody top files you? I'll give you a really good example, and this is a personal thing with me. So I located a claim in 2009, October of 2009. It's my favorite claim in the world. And anyway, I filed the claim, like I say, October of 2009. And then about 5 years later, And I absolutely unequivocally, the ground was open for mineral entry. There were previous claims on it. The people didn't do their paperwork. And it was almost a year after that that I came in, prospected it, found amazing gold, and I filed on it. 80-acre claim, and I still own it to this day. And anyway, 4 or 5 years after I filed the claim, we hike into the claim, and right in the middle of my claim is a freaking white post with a jar stuck to it. We open it up, and here's this dude with a claim that he filed the year after me that claims he owns it. So what do you do in a situation like that? Clearly, I own the claim. I've been paying property taxes on it. I've been doing the maintenance on it. I've been mining the claim and everything else. And here all of a sudden is some guy that claims that he owned it. Turns out this is the guy that actually owned the claim prior to me. He's the one that screwed up his paperwork and, let the claim go. Well, I picked it up. And so anyway, the way that we would advise people to go about this is this, and this is exactly what I did. I reached out to the guy. His name and address was on the paperwork, so I tracked him down, got a phone number, and I called him. And anyway, I said, hey, we'll just call him Bill. Bill, my name's Shannon Poe. I own X claim on this creek in this county, and you have filed over the top of me almost a year after I had filed mine. So you need to let this claim go. It's invalid, and you can't do that. And the guy literally attacked me, called me every name in the book, and he was going to kick my ass and on and on and on, which for those that know me didn't go over really well because I'm not. Anyway, I'm not going to go down that road. So what do you do in a situation like this? The guy is clearly telling me to go F myself and that it's his claim and that he's going to mine it. If he catches me in there, he said he was going to shoot me. And so, well, there's a couple of things that you can do. Now, legally speaking, it was very clear because I actually took his paperwork out of the jar. So I had a valid copy of it. We validated that he did actually record it with the county, but it was like 8 months after I'd already filed the claim. And so when the mining districts were formed here in California, and I granted they're not formed all across the Western United States, I contacted the president of the mining district, Robert Guardiola, and said, look, this is what's going on here. I would like the mining district to hold a hearing and make a decision on who actually owns the mining claim. And so they did. They had the whole board come in. They presented him with all this information, and they ruled absolutely 100% conclusively, Shannon, you own the claim. He doesn't. So they wrote up basically a determination, and I sent it to him. And I also sent it to the BLM, and I sent it to the sheriff of that particular county and saying, look, I'm just letting you guys know that, BLM, you need to invalidate the claim. And here's why. It's been ruled on by the mining district. And I sent it to the sheriff saying, look, I'm not going to let this guy mine the claim. And you may be called if there's some type of an interaction that is created from this. And the guy, again, once he got that, that's exactly what he did. He told the mining district to go F themselves too. So we're still here. Now, this has been ongoing for 5 or 6 years.
Jeez.
The guy just, 2 years, Jerry? Went in, put another post up in the middle of my
I think it's longer than that.
Wow.
Yeah, he's still trying to claim that it's his claim. So I've never physically, shouldn't say physically, I've never personally encountered the man, although I will defend my mining claim and my mineral rights that I absolutely fundamentally and legally have a right to. But, you could, I guess I could sue him. I don't know what you would really file suit for because I've never caught him actually mining or taking any of my gold, which would really be a mineral trespass. It's kind of like I look at it kind of in me personally like a gnat that's flying around my head. I just can't get rid of the damn thing. But I can tell you this, guys, if I ever catch him mining in there, I will personally detain him. It's why I carry handcuffs with me, is because of this man. And I will detain him if I catch him mining in there, and I will have him cited for that, and I will push every single button that I have to have him prosecuted for it. So what it boils down to, like what we discussed earlier, is really who files first. And file is kind of a general term, but like Jerry was pointing out, is very specifically who is at the county first.
Right.
So while there are claim jumping issues going on, what I encourage you to do, if that happens to you, is to go about the polite and professional route first and try to talk some sense into the issue. You guys are more than welcome to reach out to AMRA. We'll take a look at the paperwork and give you a legal opinion on it of who actually has, the mineral rights to the property. And we've done that. We've actually had people reach out to us that were the party that weren't the actual owners because of the dates that everything was done. And we had to break it to them. I'm sorry, buddy, but the guy that you're trying to kick off is the rightful owner. And that may not be what they want to hear, but that's the one thing that we're always going to be is truthful and tell you what the actual legal aspect of it is. So I think that this whole thing with the BLM and not doing the land status checks is really opening them up to a huge liability, which is really unfortunate because if you look at it, guys, you're not going to be able to fire sue down at the BLM for not doing their job because it's pretty much impossible.
Right.
You're basically taking money from all the rest of the taxpayers if you file a lawsuit against the BLM. Because that's where the money comes from, is from all of us. So it's kind of a really crappy, screwed up system right now, but it's something that we fully intend on if we ever have a return of sanity in government at the highest level. We're going to change that. And I give you guys my word, man, we're absolutely focused on trying to do something about that, but it isn't going to happen right now today. You think Nancy Pelosi wants to overturn something like that? I think not. So anyway, so going back to this, so let's go through the steps real quickly here again. So you're going to do the MLRS thing. We're going to show you that next week. Determine that it's public, lands in the public domain that are open for mineral entry. You're going to go out and mine it. You're going to make a valuable mineral discovery. You're going to take a picture of some stacked rock or whatever monument you want to create. Fill out the paperwork. You're going to take that to the county at that time. And we really encourage you to do that. But one thing that we want to have you do is do what's called a conformed copy. So some of the counties are really modernized and they do everything digitally, and you can even access documents online. It's pretty handy. But there's still a lot of these counties that don't really do the whole modern technology kind of thing, scanning documents. Hell, we've had to research things on microfiche. I'm not kidding you. So what we encourage you to do is when you fill out the paperwork, you're going to use blue ink. And that's really important because they call that live ink. And so if it's Jaron and Jerry and I that are filing this 60-acre claim called the Golden Ann on Blue Creek in Tuolumne County, I'm going to fill out all the paperwork. We all sign it in blue ink. And I'm going to do that on two identical pieces, on two identical location notices. I take that to the county and I'm going to pay my $15 or whatever it is to record it. They're going to stamp one and they're going to keep one. And even if they do things digitally, sometimes it'll take 2 weeks or a month. We've had it take a month and a half for them to send you that original copy. Well, instead of having to wait for the county to send that document to you, if you take a conformed copy, they're going to stamp one, keep one, they're going to stamp one. You get to walk out of the building literally with a live document
with a copy
stamped with the county. That's the one you'll then take to BLM, and you're going to actually file the mining claim. So it runs about 165. Is it 165, Jerry, right now per 20?
It ends up being, it's over $200 at BLM per 20 acres. I think it's 212 per 20 acres, plus
Okay,
plus a bunch of other fees for initial filings. Yeah, it adds up.
Yeah. So anyway, so for the sake of our argument, we're talking about roughly $650 for our three claim, our claim for the three of us right here.
Right.
Then you're going to have probably $15 recording cost at the county. Unless you're in California, you could add $75 on that, thanks to
Correct.
SB2 and the Democrats for the property ridiculous bullshit or BS thing that they did.
We know how you feel, Shannon.
I know, it's just, they tax you to death, man. But I'll tell you what, guys, but then you actually own something that you have done your own due diligence. You've gone out and mined it. You've actually done all of this stuff, and then you have something tangible. And it's real property. It's something that you can sell. You know, if you ever have to, you can transfer it to children or leave it in a will or whatever. And it's a tangible asset. So, and again, going back to this is that we really, and we're not going to discourage you from buying a claim off of Craigslist or off of some shady shyster on Facebook, but just be forewarned, guys. We see far more people that buy crap than we find people that buy good claims, and it's really rewarding when you find an exceptional deposit on your own, and then to actually have a name, a claim that you get to name and everything else, and so it's pretty cool. But anyway.
Shannon, to get back to the topic real quick that we were talking before we jumped on the broadcast, it's a very common, most basic question, but I feel sometimes it does get overlooked. And that was the question about the types of lands that you can find areas to be able to claim. And I remember Jere kind of touching on that subject a little bit. About that. Do you want to kind of let everybody know, all the viewers that are watching right now, let them know, I guess you could say, the official terms for the types of land that you can go out and try to find a claim to be able to claim?
You want to take that, Jere?
Sure. So what you're looking, the term that's used is open for mineral entry. And as far as I know, there are only two types of land that are open to mineral entry, BLM or Forest Service land. Those are administration agencies, obviously.
Can I correct you really quick here, Jere?
Sure.
Not Forest Service or BLM land. Forest Service or BLM administered land.
You're
they
absolutely
don't own any
correct.
land and it ain't theirs. So
you're absolutely correct. We own that land.
Yes,
as Americans.
I knew that was coming from Shannon.
I know better too. But so it's either of those two, and just common sense will tell you can't go into Yosemite, a national park, and file a mining claim. You can't file a mining claim on state land, at least actually in Alaska you can. So that's the exception to the rule. So most state lands you can. You can't on somebody's private property. Determining that if it's open to mineral entry is in my opinion the easier job. You can go on almost any map and get an outline of the Forest Service administered land. And you could also pull the official record out of the master title plats. The harder thing to determine is if somebody else already has a claim on it. Right. That's the real trick. That's the hard hurdle to jump through to make sure that you're not filing somebody else, because as we all know, corner posts disappear, monuments disappear, people don't maintain them. Do they have to maintain them? And the answer is no, they actually don't have to maintain them in a legal fashion, at least in California. I think Arizona, they have a state statute that says you have to maintain your corner posts and everything annually. So
Montana might be that way too.
Could you? So another question on that same subject. I'm sure some of the folks would like to know. So it does become tricky when you want to make sure that you're not top filing. Do
Right.
you have that option to be able to go to a BLM office um, and ask and see if that piece of property that you're trying to claim has already been claimed? Can you go to an office and say, "Hey, this is the parcel"? Can you go in there and they look that up, even
See,
though,
that's
let's
what the
say,
whole land, that's the whole land status thing that we've been talking about is, Jaron. That's their
Yeah.
job. They're
right,
Yeah.
right,
supposed
right,
to do
right,
that. And they can do that literally when you're standing at the counter.
Yeah.
right. So well, and that's the thing, we tend to overlook some of the basic questions, but the sad thing is we have to deal with what's going on with the MLRS. We have to deal with all of that crap. And
Yep.
so I'm sure there's a couple people here that are like, well, can I go to the
Okay.
BLM office and see?
So there's actually two sources for that information. It's the county and the
Right.
BLM. And yes, if you go into either one of those, they're usually pretty good. BLM will help you. If you give them a claim number, they'll pull the file and you can look it up. But you have to have the information. You got to say, this claim is in the area, but I don't know how big it is or where it actually sits. You got to go pull the file, whether that's from the county recorder's office or whether that's from BLM, and pull their location notice and physically look at it to determine where that claim actually lies, the boundaries of it actually lie.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's very labor intensive when you have to go to every county, go to the county and not all counties will look it up for you. They'll say, there's the
Right.
computer. If you need a little help, we'll steer you in the right direction. But you got to know what you're looking for. You can't just say, I'm looking for any claims over here, because
Right. Right.
the county
We're going to
recorder's
cover
got
that.
all kinds of documents they record,
We're going
not
to cover
not
that
just
next
mining
week
claims.
too.
Yeah,
Jerry's going to actually show that on live on screen of how to use these tools
right.
because the BLM is so screwed up. So there's ways that we're going to try to teach the watchers really what they can do to try to alleviate that concern.
Right. Well, we had a question here that I wanted to go ahead and bring up real quick. This came from Terrapin Rocks. He says, I have a claim adjacent to one of mine. The legit owner doesn't work it, but it's top filed by another guy who does work it, building to a messy situation. So, I'm kind of wondering, that kind of plays back into what we were talking about with the top filing situation. I mean, with that whole problem, I mean, where could you really go from there? I mean, if it's compounded to that situation, I mean, that's pretty sticky situation to try to get resolved, I'd imagine.
Well, that's kind of an interesting statement there. I mean, it's an adjacent claim to this person, which I'm assuming is not the one that's being mined on. But if you got somebody that's top filed that's in there mining somebody else's claim that they can validly prove that it's theirs, then you have criminal trespass, and it's a
Right.
federal violation. It's a crime. And
Right.
yes, the problem that we have in today in 2022 is I can't tell you honestly and be sincere about it that I've ever encountered any judge anywhere in the United States that knows mining law.
Right.
Not one. Not
Right.
one. So their job really, or their attorney's job, is to educate the judge on what mining law is. Now we have one that comes pretty close. Probably the most knowledgeable that I've ever encountered
Right.
is actually in Mariposa County, California, which is out of Yosemite. And he handled actually a dredge case. A guy was cited for dredging just a few months ago, and basically dismissed the case because he thinks that the law is bull crap, and he's right. But anyway, that's the only one that we've ever encountered that actually seemed to know what the mining acts were, or at least took the time to go and read them to see what the miners' rights were. So there lies the problem is, what can you do if somebody was in there mining on your claim and you had the legal title to it, you have to know your rights. And so, unfortunately, in today's environment, everybody needs to read the freaking Mining Act so they understand what their rights are. There's no summary page or anything that I've ever encountered that is written. There's a lot of people that know information about the Mining Act. So, obviously us, people like Kirby Jackson and Tom Kitcher, and these guys that write a lot of things, Pat Keene. I can think of dozens of people that I know personally that are very knowledgeable. And the way that they obtain their information and their knowledge is by going out and reading the actual act and learning that way, typing in USFS 2800 manual and hitting enter and reading that PDF of, talking about plans of operations and notice of intents and things like that. It's about educating yourself is really what it boils down to. This series that we're doing here is to try to give them that leg up or that boost or that kick in the butt of here's all the resources. Guys, we could do 5 freaking podcasts just talking about the mining grant. But you can't do that. You've got to try to pack as much information that people can actually understand and digest. And then when they walk away, they feel, you know what, I'm pretty comfortable. I understand what all of these steps that I have to go through in order to do this. And if this happens, like a claim jumper, or, does the 14-day camping rule apply, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, what I need to do. Those are kind of the things that we're hoping that people will glean from this. But again, we're trying to put this back into your lap as well, as that, guys, you got to go out and read this stuff on your own as well. It's not just magically going to pop into your head.
On the top filing situation, your only recourse for claim boundary or top file is the county court. And as Shannon said, the judges and the people there just don't know the mining law. And we've seen some horrible misjustices done to the senior locator who has all the rights, and it's sad.
It becomes
to see
a sticky situation.
Decisions. Yeah, but the county court is the court of redress for that. And what a curious situation to me is if the county is collecting taxes for your mining claim and there's a top file situation, that means there's 2 mining claims on the exact same piece of property. Is it legal for the county to collect taxes from
absolutely
2 people
not? Absolutely not.
So
absolutely not.
To me, they should be much more active on the top file situation, because they certainly can be sued for collecting taxes from 2 people on the same piece of property.
Yeah, that's that is just an insane situation to have to deal with. And you got to look at it from one person's standpoint that goes out and files for 40 acres, let's say, or even 60 acres, and they get all excited, they get their paperwork filed and all that, and then a month later or 2 months later, they're all established, they're enjoying their time over there on that claim, getting good gold, and then they show up and this person's on the claim, taking their gold from them. I mean, that can just be an absolute worst case scenario situation for, not only the top filers, but for the people who originally filed for that claim in itself. Right. Then you're contacting the county, then, and it just becomes this absolute problem for both individuals.
We have a situation that, first of all, every single person, that is watching this are obviously have learned about Prospecting Buddy, either through AMRA or through Prospecting Buddy. If you're watching this and you don't follow AMRA's Facebook page, go do that when you get off this, because we're working an issue right now, and we call it the IBAR disaster. IBAR is a specific place in Tuolumne County, California, that is below an LDMA, that's the Lost Dutchman's Mining Association, patented private property. They have this chunk of land here and then there's a strip of public lands here, and then right below that, we have AMRA actually has a claim that we have access to that's right below. It's actually even called IBAR. That section in between there has been overtaken by these guys that are doing some really bad things. Hell, they just hauled in a 30 freaking foot boat down there. They hauled in like a 40-foot mobile home and ripped the walls out of it. There was trash everywhere, open sewers, dumping raw sewage into the river, which is my drinking water, guys. I live downstream from that. Really pisses me off. Trash everywhere. There was needles. There was drug use, burned out vehicles, trashed out vehicles. They rolled one of them down into the frickin' river. We got notified of this, and what the hell? We go down there, and there were mining claim signs hung on all of these trees in this area that we knew specifically had been withdrawn, and it's a state recreation area. So this is something we've been working on for about 6 months. And guys, again, I can't stress enough, go follow AMRA on Facebook, and you're going to read about this. You'll see the videos that we just shot down there a couple of weeks ago and what we're doing to combat this. So it's an example of, hey, we're a mining rights group, but we're fighting illegal miners. That they filed these illegal mining claims on an area that was withdrawn by an act of Congress in Washington, D.C. in 1952. It's designated a state rec area. You can't file a mining claim on that any more than you could file one in Yosemite, like what we said. So we're trying to get these guys removed out of there and return it back to the public. Because if you're Jaren and you take your son down there who's 8 years old and you want to teach him to pan in this rec area that you saw on the freaking map that says state rec area designated just solely for public to go down and enjoy and camp, they're physically running people out of this area and these campgrounds. That's unacceptable. So
completely. Yeah.
You know, and it's something we're obviously, I'm not going to give a lot away on this, but there's a shit storm that's coming to these guys that we're sending their way very, very shortly, that they're going to be removed. And we're going to go in there probably with a lot of our AMRA members and volunteers, and we're going to clean all this trash out and return this back to the pristine area that it should be, that it was designated for. So
Right.
this is absurd. This is 70 years ago that Congress passed this. It's still there. It's on the books. It's a rec area. And these, homeless people basically overtook this thing. And it really is, it's got the entire community pissed off.
It does.
So that's a good example of an area that you can't file a mining claim on, but it would still show up as in, this happens to be the Stanislaus National Forest. So you can't just go off of a map and say, okay, the Stanislaus National Forest is this big on a map. Not all areas in there can you file a mining claim on just because it's National Forest managed land.
Well, and to go off of that, we just got a question here from Mr. Jason. He says, what happens to claims that are closed? Can you reclaim the area to mine?
Yes. Once a claim is closed, the land returns to open status, and you can go file a mining claim on it.
So I actually have a little bit of my own question on that subject. So with that being said, and obviously we know how the BLM works with with statuses and stuff like that. Once a claim is closed, once a piece of land is closed, I'd assume that they don't obviously instantly put that on the website. No. So it'll still show as filed or still show as active.
Yep.
Right.
So until they get around to it.
Yeah, it can be a year, Jaren.
So my next question to that, the second part, which it's kind of a rat's nest, and I know you guys know the second part of the question, is with that question is we really don't know how many claims are out there that are already closed. Correct?
You're right. And not only that, is it really kind of brings up a whole legal quagmire as well, is that so if let's just take Jere, for example, somebody that really knows a lot about mining claims and how to research. So Jere could go down there, fill out the little paperwork, give him your ID, and you know what?
Right.
I want to pull California mining claim number 1824335. Okay. He gets the paperwork and he goes, okay, I can see clearly in the file here, because he's looking at every single document that's ever been associated with that claim. He has access to and can read it right there in BLM. He can go over to copy machine, copy the whole damn file if he wants.
Right.
But he'll be able to determine right there, this claim should be closed. Because they didn't do a data entry into a computer, does that mean that he can't go file on it? No.
Mm-mm.
But I mean,
That still becomes this. Yeah.
Because the BLM is so screwed up, and because they're so far, well, they're not just so far behind, they're refusing to do their freaking job is what it boils down to.
Right.
So would I go and file a claim if I pulled the file and I looked and I could make the determination that it was closed? I don't know, man.
There's a lot of good ground out there.
And do you really want to get in that
the headache?
No. Do you really want to get in that sticky situation where you're like you were saying, where you got a guy on the claim, it's you figured out that it's quote unquote closed, but who knows what's going on with it. You get into an argument with the guy while you're out there, and I mean, mind you, a lot of these claims across the United States are not just 10 minutes from a city. We're talking miles and miles into the forestry. Do you really want to, deal with a situation like that? No cell service, no. I mean, that's kind of up to the person that's really trying to get a piece of ground. I mean, it's a sticky subject. But with that being said, I really wanted to get into the fun segment that we have called "That's Not True." That's Not True segment. I think there is a crap ton of different things that are simply not true that I would love for you, Jere, and you, Shannon, to go over to simply put all these things to rest. That way, the folks watching right now can simply put those things to rest and move on, with whatever questions they may have or whatever topic that those, run into.
The funny thing is like I had mentioned earlier, is that reading all of these different posts of people and the stuff that they write, and they probably have the greatest of intentions, but they're just purely wrong on a lot of this. So an example is, can you stay longer than 14 days? If you're the owner of a mining claim, can you camp longer than 14 days? Which is what they call the 14-day rule of Forest Service or BLM. And the answer is absolutely yes. So as long as what you are doing by staying there is, and it's important that you understand the terminology, is incidental to your mining, then yes, you can. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. The South Fork of the Clearwater in Idaho, northern Idaho, up in the Panhandle, we get a 1 month window to dredge that. It's from July 15th to August 15th. We go up, we camp on the claim right off the edge of the road in these little pullouts and stuff, and we stay there for a month. We don't get disturbed. Even though the Forest Service absolutely despises and hates the miners, they know that they can't do anything about that. Now, do you have Forest Service LEOs, law enforcement officers, and other little zealots within the agencies come out and try to harass the miners? Yeah. And 99% of the times is because they don't know the law. And that the miners have a right, as long as it's incidental to your mining, meaning that you are mining every single day, then you have a right to camp there. It's as simple as that. And there are cases that go all the way up to the Ninth Circuit that validate that. So yes, you can camp. So here's another good one. So I just want to make sure everybody really fundamentally knows that. And we've done videos and written articles on that as well. The other thing is I saw a post I think it was yesterday, where somebody was saying that, just because you own a mining claim, you can't keep other people off of there. if somebody wants to go and fish while you're mining,
Right.
can go and do whatever they want. And that's not necessarily true either. Because when you're a mining claim owner, you have first right to the ground that the mining claim encompasses. So as long as you are mining, if anybody else outside tries to come in and they materially interfere, and that those two words are really important because they're legal terms. If they materially interfere with your mining operation, then that's a crime. It's an offense. We
So
had
if you're
signs made, and I don't mean to interrupt you there, Jaron, but we had signs made, and we did this specifically for the Forest Service in Idaho because they were constantly just trying to bug the crap out of us daily. So we had these custom signs made, big signs that said it is a violation of federal law to materially interfere with this mining operation. And we put our mining hours were from, what were they, Jerry? 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the Forest Service, once they read that, they're like, oh, shoot, we're not going to touch these guys.
They
So
were really polite
so
after that.
501, they would pull up and they would do whatever the hell that they wanted to do.
Well, they
But
were very
can't
polite.
materially interfere with you, just like a camper can or a fisherman or a hunter or a hiker or whatever it is. They can't materially interfere. Now, if you've got a 160-acre claim and you're mining one little tiny 1-acre portion of it, and these guys are a quarter of a mile away camped, that they're not materially interfering. And you know what? Who cares?
right.
So I don't have a problem with that. We just, the only time that we've ever personally encountered it is really up in Idaho, and we resolved that with this sign. And the people watching this, they can go to our YouTube page and they can watch these South Fork of the Clearwater videos that we've shot over the last 6-7 years, and they can actually see us interacting with Forest Service and talking about material interference. Anyway, so that was one that I read and just went, and like I say, these guys probably have the greatest intentions. They just really don't know what they're talking about.
And that's
there, buddy.
Go for it, Jer. Go for it,
Yeah,
Jer.
I got one for you. Here's the myth. If BLM takes your money for your mining claim, that means your claim is valid and good to go. Absolutely false. They'll take you walk in there and say you want to file
I knew that question
claim.
was coming, Jerry.
It could be the worst paperwork in the world, and they're going to take your money.
We have literally seen claims filed on a napkin. No kidding.
And when they do the land status check and figure out that they filed it in a withdrawn area, well, then they'll null your claim, so void your claim. So they will take your money.
Let me give you an example of that. And this is many, many moons ago, really, when I didn't quite understand how to file a correct mining claim. I didn't have a Jerry back then. I filed a claim on an area that I thought was really good. It had really good gold in it, and it was open according to that old geocommunicator website. So I claimed 160 acres because back then it didn't make any difference if it was 20 or 160 acres. You could get the same price. So screw it. I filed on the whole 160. And BLM, sure enough, took my money. I recorded it with the county, did all that. And then I was down there mining, and I had this couple come up and go, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Mining." And they're like, "You're on my property." And I went, "What?" And they said, "Yeah, you're on our private property." And I was really nice and polite with them and everything. And I'm like, I had no idea BLM let me file this. And so they pull up, actually, they had a map that showed there's a master title plat. And it showed I was definitely on their private property. So I said, "Look, I'm really sorry. I don't know what the hell happened here. BLM should have caught this. They didn't." And that was really and that's probably been 20 years ago, my first foray really into the understanding that BLM will take your money for anything, guys. And a good example is this whole IBAR thing. Yeah. These guys filed these claims 3 years ago. BLM, when they were standing at the counter paying the money, they have to go to their computer and actually type this in to get a mining claim number. that should have told them right then that this area was withdrawn, and they should have went,
Right.
hey, you can file on this, but they didn't, and they took the money. So is it the fault of the guys down there? Well, we believe yes, because we've gotten information subsequent to that just in the last couple of days that these guys knew beforehand that the land in the area was withdrawn, and they filed on anyway. So it really boils down to them, being culpable for this. But the point is, Jerry was making there, guys, they'll take your money on anything you want to file on it. You want to file right next to the frickin', the lodge in Yosemite, they take your money for that.
Yeah, I would like to try that just for curiosity.
We need to make our own little series where we test out the good old BLM.
Yeah.
So another one that you want me to bring one up, Jaron?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Yeah, I'll hold on.
Another one that I just saw here was actually pretty humorous to me, and that is, it was a thread. I don't know. I read day before yesterday that said, well, if you're a mining claim owner, you can't stop somebody from metal detecting on your mining claim. You really can't do that. And if it's somebody else's claim, it doesn't work that way. Or collecting rocks or anything like that, you can't.
That's still a mineral, so you
can't. Anything is, for one, you don't know what they're collecting if they're metal detecting. There's two types of metal detecting that I do. Is either A, I'm going for gold, or B, I'm going for artifacts. Either one of them requires you to disturb the ground of the mining claim, which is fundamentally illegal. You can't do that. So, you just can't do that.
I have a few comments that are coming in here, and just as a reminder, guys, the last part of this series, we're going to do a Q&A. So I'm sure a lot of you folks have a lot of questions. So make sure that you put any questions, hits, runs, errors, concerns that you have in the comments. And the last part of this series, we're going to answer any type of question you have. So make sure that any questions you do have, put them in the comments. And then that way, at the end of the show, we can go through all the questions, hits, runs, errors, concerns that you guys might have. And then we can steer you in the right path. With that being said, we kind of got a bigger comment here. I'm going to pop it up on the screen and kind of get Jerry's input on this. It's not necessarily a question. It has a lot of detail into it. So I'm going to post it up here. It says, Conversations with Portland or BLM office informed us that it is not the BLM's responsibility to verify the validity of your claim maps submitted to them. The responsibility is with the county assessor's office, where you must file first and include the filing paperwork to the BLM. Claim ownership in case of multiple filings is for the earliest filing date.
Well, yes. In short, the answer to his question is yes, that's correct. The county is the office of record. If you do end up in court over a claim issue, you can't use BLM documents to support your stand. You have to use your filings at the county. I would add a caveat. It's not the first date they're going to look at for the senior locator is the location date, not the date you file, because you have 90 days between your location date and the requirement to file. So you can actually make your location, put up your post, your notice, all that, and then wait 89 days and file it with the county. So it's not technically the filing date unless you're both filing on the same day. Then the times and when you're filing,
and the location dates are the same.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So we have this next question here.
Well,
it says,
before we move on to that one, Jaron.
Yeah, go for it. You got it.
Let me make a mention I want to just say something about the Portland office. I grew up in Oregon, and John Ratley, and this is back in the early days of AMRA. I think it was probably 2013 or 14.
When he was still pulling white hairs out of his beard, if I remember right.
We drove up to the office there, and we were filing some claims that we had found up in Washington. And we walked into the BLM office in downtown Portland, and we'd been mining and everything else. I don't know. We probably had 1.5 ounces of gold in vials on us when we walked into the building, and we were talking about mining claims, and we didn't find, and we had probably 5 people around us that they kept pulling, oh, Jan, come over here, Bill, you come over here, because we were talking about how we wanted to file these mining claims, and nobody knew what the hell they were doing. And so we went, and they're like, really? There's still gold out there? And we're in the freaking BLM office where you're filing the mining claims. And I pulled a vial of gold out and I set it on the desk there in front of this gal and these other people. And they were like, oh my God, what's that, like $40,000 in gold? Like, you guys have got to be kidding me. First of all, you don't even know what the freaking process is here. And this is what you're supposed to do. Jeez. And I'm instantly thinking of, who the hell trains you? How did you even, what do you guys do here? They had no idea. So as far as Portland goes, in my opinion, and this is just Shannon's opinion, they're retards up there. They have no idea what the hell they're doing. So you're going to get that. California is really good. Arizona is phenomenal. Montana is pretty good. Colorado is pretty good. Idaho is very, very good. Washington and Oregon suck.
It'll vary by state.
Yeah, New Mexico is good. I mean, obviously, it gets better when you get into areas that have a lot of mining. There's not a lot of mining. I shouldn't say that. There's not as much mining in Washington as there is in Arizona or, right. Nevada and places like that. So, but I just wanted to make that known about.
No, definitely. Most definitely, man. We had another one here. We just had a flood of comments come through. Just give me a second here. So this is one of the most common, with a bunch of newbies that come in. It's kind of one of those common sense questions, but it's definitely hilarious, and I figured I'd bring it up real quick. Terrapin Rock says, how about the classic, can I build a house on my claim question?
No. This goes back to, I think it was in 91 or 92 when Clinton removed the whole patented process of. So what patenting is if the claim that Jaron and Jerry and I have, the Golden Ann, we have found an incredible discovery. It's worth millions of dollars. Prior to Clinton, you could actually file for a patent, which basically turns that property that claim into private property. And then you can build on it. You can do, whatever else within county regulations and state, whatever, building permits, whatever. But that is the patent process. Now, there's only been maybe 2 or 3 people that we're aware of since 1992 that have been successful with a patented application. And one of the guys was an attorney we met a couple of years ago in Idaho that actually kind of guided that process. He's still alive. He's a fairly old guy now, but I don't think that it's possible to do any of the patents anymore. We would love to see that come back, and it's something we've actually discussed with a senator, but you can't do that right now. So the answer is no.
No, absolutely not.
That doesn't mean that you can't build structures on a mining claim.
Right.
So, for example, we've helped several load miners with their plans of operations, which we could talk a little bit about NOIs and POOs in a second here. I don't know how long Jaron wants to go here, but
as long as you guys are willing to go.
So we have a guy. This is a guy that was in Montana that had a series of really, really rich load mines. And it was up out of Missoula. And anyway, there were cabins and structures that were actually there for over 100 years. Those things that are already existing are actually protected under the Antiquities Act and some other things like that. And if those are incidental to their mining operation and they existed prior to all this other BS, then you can use those. And we have several people that we know that have these old time cabins that were built in the 1930s that they use them on their mining claims.
Right.
Some of them are placer, some of them are lode. Now, we also know of some miners that have put structures on there to store their equipment in, and whether it be a lode mining up, there's a very famous mine down in Arizona of a guy that we helped that was being denied the ability to even mine it for 6 years. We stepped in and represented him and beat the crap out of the BLM. And in 6 months, we got him back to mining. And here we are, Jerry, 3 years later, and the guy's still doing whatever he needs to do and mining it like crazy. And he's happy and he's finding the gold.
An interesting note on that, though, Shannon, he's living on the on the claim during mining season and in his RV. So
because it's incidental to his mining operation.
Correct. So he didn't build a house. I don't know. I would wonder what the BLM would or Forest Service would say if you said, I have to build this house to live in. Your bond. I think it's
enormous.
Technically, you may be able to, but it's going to be considered as temporary structure, and you're going to have to remove it when you're done with your mining operation.
They show up to your mining operation. You got a 2-story house. I'm kind of curious what they would say.
No, it won't go well.
I think I know who that Terrapin Rocks is. I'm sure he's going to send me a message tonight. But that was a really cool question. I like that one. So you can. Here's the thing, guys, is it boils down to, and I'm going to pound this word into your head as well, or this 2 words, significant disturbance, or a significant surface disturbance. That's what POO, aptly named POO, a plan of operations, is if you're going to cause a significant disturbance. And then there's an NOI, which is a notice of intent. That you're going to do a specific type of mining operation. So an NOI is something that you wouldn't have to put up a bond, meaning a bond is an amount of money that let's say that Jerry and Jaren and I decide that we're going to go and we're going to run a big backhoe, we're going to run an excavator and a bulldozer on a lode mine, and we're not going to build any structures or anything like that, but we're going to use these 3 heavy pieces of equipment. Those types of pieces of equipment are going to cause a significant disturbance. They're earth moving. They're very, very heavy. They're large. And the bond that you have to pay is if the Forest Service or the BLM, all 3 of these break down, or one of them breaks down or whatever, and the Forest Service has to go in and use their resources, meaning your taxpayer money, to remove those. That's what you're putting the bond up for. And it's not something, and this is something most people don't know, that's not subjective, meaning that the Forest Service in the Sierra National Forest doesn't make a determination that's completely different than the Forest Service in the Stanislaus National Forest. There's actually a bond calculator, and it addresses it's about 5-6 pages, Jerry?
Yeah.
Roughly. Yep. And anyway, you go in and it's basically a PDF that you fill in. Are there high walls, where something's going to fall on people? And if there are, what are you doing? What kind of equipment? On and on and on. And you go all the way down, and then you hit calculate, and it'll tell you what that bond amount is. There's disputing that, and that's what we did in Arizona at the Goldeye mine. Is they were trying to claim that this guy had to pay $40,000 in whatever bond. Ridiculous. It's just made up crap. Well, we were able to dispute all of that, and we got his bond down to about $5,000 or $6,000, which was reasonable based on the fact this is the same guy that breaks the 40-foot RV and camps there the entire mining season. And he had, other outbuilding and whatever. But he also cleaned up the entire thing. So that's what a bond is And that's when you would need a plan of operations if you're going to use earth moving equipment or you're going to make a significant disturbance. And that's really where the problem lies. A few short years ago, it used to be that was defined, are you going to disturb more than 5 acres? Well, now that's changed to, half these, I shouldn't say half, but there's quite a few of the Forest Service. We haven't really encountered only one BLM agency in the entire West that was trying to claim that using a shovel causes significant disturbance. And that's BS, guys. That's already been discerned in court. It's been decided.
Right.
You can't cause a significant disturbance with hand tools. It's court ruling. But if you're going to run a backhoe or a dozer or an excavator or something like that, even a bobcat can be just, basically described as earth moving equipment and causes significant disturbance. The 5 acre rule is kind of just basically dissipated. We kind of wish it would come back because realistically, we've gone in and disturbed a couple of acres of land on operations that we have done, and we used heavy equipment, and we basically paid a bond and did a plan of operations, and we didn't have any problem. But we kind of have a luxury. We're also AMRA, so
Well, that's another thing that I'd love for us to cover on the second part of the series is the bond situation. We've had folks on the podcast, and they've kind of talked a bit about the whole bond situation when you get up to that point in what you're doing with your operation. I don't want to speak too much about it, but briefly, with the bond situation compared to putting up a bond yourself or having a business, putting up a bond through a business, that's one of the subjects that I'd love to cover on the second part of the series. Of course, when we get into that, because I know it varies state by state, but from what I've heard, putting up a bond yourself versus having a company put up a bond would be much, much cheaper and much easier on the operation. That's one of those things that I was kind of brought up, that was brought up in one of the podcasts. And those are one of the things that I really wanted to kind of shed a light on the second part of, our series.
I would encourage, and I'm going to let Jerry talk about that. He's probably as knowledgeable as anybody, but I would encourage anybody that wants to know a little bit about bonds. I think you could do a simple Google search, type in Bureau of Land Management, not BLM, because if you type in BLM, you're going to get Black Lives Matter. Google has changed all that. So type in Bureau of Land Management bond calculator and hit enter, and it'll pull it up, and you can play around in there. You can look at all the different stuff, and you can really start to see how those costs are actually calculated. Right. So, Jerry, you want to address?
Yeah, I think what this question is getting at is there's you see the bond scenario used in contracting. If you're a contractor, you're required to put up I don't know, it depends on what category, but a $100,000 bond in case you screw somebody's house up. The state has access to that to rectify it. And as the contractor, you would only you pay a third party, a bonding company. It's kind of like your bail bondsman, Shannon. if you don't have,
oh, you're gonna pay for that one.
If you don't have the money for your bond, then you can go to a bail bond. Well, you could do that as a contractor as well. And I haven't run into it with mining, although I'm sure there's bonding companies that out there that would provide that service for you for a cost, of course. But yeah, the requirements for bond for your mining for your plan of operation are spelled out really quite distinctly in the Forest Service manual and how they collect bonds. And I don't know if there's a bonding agency out there that can fulfill those for you. I suspect there probably is.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Right. Well, so aside from that, hopefully we were able to clear up a little bit. Of course, I'd love to get into it, like I was saying earlier with the bonding situation. To jump back to where we were, we have a question here that we already covered, but we'll go ahead and bring it up real quick. It says, I filed with county and filed with BLM, but my timing was late. My question is, can you tell me about the correct time for filing and paying?
Jerry, that is all you, buddy.
Okay, since we're talking about filing mining claims, I'm going to assume he's talking about the initial filing of your notice of location with
cover the
with them.
annual paperwork.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and with the initial filing, you have 90 days from your date of location to file with the county and the BLM. Counties may differ, states may differ. I think Washington maybe 30 days. There's a couple of states that have a shorter time frame that you have to file with county. But as far as BLM, it's 90 days. And as far as the annual filing, normally we talk about September 1st as the filing deadline. Sorry, Charlie, there is absolutely no leeway in that. Zero. If you don't make it, you're tough out of luck.
Right.
If you're having problems filling out the paperwork or you're not sure how it goes, send it in, because even if it's incorrect, they'll give you a chance to correct it, but you still made that date, so you're good. But
Right.
no, if you miss the date, you're done. They're closing your claim so they can collect the money when you refile it.
Well, we have a pretty funny comment that I'd love to pop up. Shannon's going to hate me for it, but I absolutely have to put it up here. It says, ask Shannon if he can see gold with those glasses on.
The unfortunate part about that comment is you put up the guy's name, and so Jeremiah, you've now moved to the top of my shit list. So expect some really creative pictures to appear on Facebook of your youth.
Well, we got another funny comment here that I absolutely have to put up toward the end of the show here. It deals with you again, Shannon, so we absolutely have to do it. It says, ask Shannon if he found my Barbie.
Oh my God! So is that
that's Brian?
That's somebody that lives in Massachusetts.
That's Mr. Brian.
That's got to be Brian Wilder.
Yep.
Oh God! I hope that he showed pictures of that. So Brian Wilder, who's on Bering Sea Gold, he came to our dinner. He's a good friend of ours. Anyway, so one of the little pranks that we played on Brian and another buddy by the name of JD Wheeler, we made a Stockton Barbie and a Lodi Fairgrounds Barbie. And so we had one of our AMRA staff put tattoos and like missing teeth, and her hair was already ripped, her clothes up and all that stuff. And we presented that to Brian in a little prank as part of our raffle. And so I know that's Brian. So you piece of shit.
That was Mr. Brian himself.
Love that guy. He needs to get out here and go mining with us. He really does. Yeah. We need to drag his ass up to the hill and put him to work. Guy's a freaking tank when it comes to dredging.
Yeah. No, that's the awesome thing is, believe it or not, it's going to be my first time dredging this year, 2022. My first time ever being on a dredge, so I'm looking forward to that. Nice. Kind of worried about it, but at the same time, pretty excited. So I guess we'll see what happens.
You're just swimming with the fishes.
Don't worry.
Swimming with the fishes.
Don't worry.
We have a few more comments here. Mr. Richard, correct me if I'm wrong. Richard Pine says Utah is 30 days to be able to file.
Yeah.
He also says your insurance agent should be able to help you with a surety bond.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I've not heard of that. I've not heard that before.
Let me interject something here, Jared. Yeah. Is that we helped Glenn Billiter, who's another friend of ours. He was the original dozer operator, I think, for Parker on Gold Rush many moons ago, back when Parker was still a kid. And Glenn's got a pretty big operation in Arizona. I mean, really running a lot of big equipment. And his bond is significant because you're talking about big wash plants and buildings and storage facilities to park, front loaders and backhoes and excavators and dozers and earth movers. And I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's a huge operation. Most of the folks, especially watching this, if they're trying to learn how to file a mining claim, aren't immediately going to go into, an operation that's going to
big
mine
commercial operation, right?
acres, where you're talking about a, $250,000 bond. Is that you're talking about bonds that are probably going to be anywhere between 2,000 and maybe 10 or 15,000 bucks, and that's probably it. And that's even for running, bobcats, excavators, backhoes, and things like that.
Right.
And so, I just want to put that into perspective: is that don't let that fear of a bond freak you out, because it's not as bad as what they're portraying.
Yeah.
I guess
it depends on the office you're dealing with, but they're typically not that.
Yeah.
Not as difficult as they're made out to be.
Well, and like I said, I'd love for all of us to be able to talk about the whole bonding situation. When you think it's the right time to get to that next step on the second part of the series. To get back to what we were talking about, one of the questions that came up on Facebook was, once you have your claim established, it's filed or it's showing active, what is the next steps to be able to use equipment on your claim? Do you put in this? Do you do that? Jerry, do you want to kind of touch on that a little bit? And I know it varies by state, but if we can kind of touch on that.
Well, the Forest Service and BLM regs read the same throughout the country, and it all focuses back to what Shannon was saying, is on a significant disturbance. So,
and that, Jerry, that's really just, let me just interject this. That's where you got to type in USFS 2800 manual and read the damn thing.
Yeah. But like I say, it all focuses around the significant disturbance. In years past, it's been, you can go up to 5 acres. Well, they frown on that these days if you're disturbing 5 acres of ground. And my beef with it is that definition has changed over the years. We know for sure if you're using hand tools, you will not create a significant disturbance. You don't need to notify anybody. You don't need a plan of operation. And conversely, if you're using heavy equipment, that pretty much necessitates a plan of operation, because it's presumed will create a significant disturbance. So it all hinges around that. If you're using it, on the Clearwater, they wanted us to get a plan of operation to suction dredge, which historically is never been the case. Does suction dredging create a significant disturbance? Every miner in the world would tell you no, but you're getting more and more regulatory agencies that are saying yes. So I kind of hate to say it in public and out loud, but it's a lot easier to get forgiveness than it is permission sometimes. So
right.
if you're in doubt, I'm not sure if I'm creating a disturbance or not. Personally, my choice. I'm not telling you to do it. If I don't know, I'm gonna do it and wait and wait for somebody to tell me different.
And I agree with you on that. And the reason being, and we can all agree on this same subject, is, the way that the BLM is right now, the forestry land, people claiming on top of claims that are already established. I mean, we're to the point now in our community where that's the choice we're going to take due to the way it's being mismanaged. I mean, let's be honest here. We have done our due diligence, at least the majority of us has done our due diligence and we're still dealing with the same things that we've been dealing with years ago, and it's still the
Right.
same situation. They updated this and it's still a problem. We go to the office and we're told, well, don't know what to tell you, there's a computer over there. You see what I mean? So
Right.
we've gotten to that point. It's not like we're just, right off the bat going and doing what we want to do. We're getting to that point due to the reason of how we're being treated.
Right.
Let me
So
summarize something in this. So, what it boils down to, folks, is that the people in positions of power within these agencies are political, and they have political ideologies that butt up against what facts or science or the truth is. Um, and that's exactly what we deal with now. And so you're always going to get that. And until there's ramifications for these people's actions that completely and totally ignore facts and science, then it's not going to change. And let me give you an example of that. And we keep referring back to the South Fork of the Clearwater and dredging up there, really in opposition to the Forest Service and the EPA. A simple fact, a scientific proven fact, is that suction dredging creates fish habitat. It doesn't destroy it, it actually creates it. It's an undisputed fact.
Yep.
It doesn't pollute because it doesn't add anything. And that's where Sandra Day O'Connor, the Supreme Court Justice, had the soup pot theory, is if this is a pot of soup right here in front of me and I dip a ladle into it and I lift it up out of the water or out of the soup and then I pour it back in there, am I adding anything to it? No, you're not. But the thing is that the act of actual dredging, you create holes in the river and it creates refugia. And basically what that is a safe zone for fish. Shot video when we were in Idaho of when we first started dredging and the water was about 6 or 8 inches deep, right, Jerry?
Yep.
And not a single fish there. We punched a 5-foot deep hole to bedrock and it was probably 15 feet around and there was probably 30 fish in there. The next day and the next day after that, that hole widened where it was 50 feet by 50 feet and 6 feet and 7 feet. And we had boulders that we rolled over and there were 150,000 freaking fish in there.
Right.
So much so that the fisheries biologist from the Forest Service came up and said, oh my God, this is perfect fish habitat. Please don't fill in these holes. And we went, well, we really don't want to, but we're required to by the state. We had to fill in all of those holes and ruin all of that perfect fish habitat that this guy was going, don't do it. If we didn't, we would have been cited for it. That's an example where you got politics on one side and you got science and facts and the good aspects of what we were doing that get overridden by the politics.
Right.
And
politics,
that's what it boils down to. And, let me just say this, is that we get criticized quite a bit. I shouldn't say quite a bit, occasionally on our Facebook page because we talk a lot about politics. Guys, until you make the connection that politics runs every single freaking aspect of mining and it is involved in every single aspect of mining, you're never going to get it. It is a part of everything that we do. It's why we talk about it. It's why we're trying to change things like accountability acts and things like that. That's politics. And right now, in my lifetime, I've never seen anything like, I never even dreamed it would be this bad. But it really is.
Well, and I think folks need to get involved. That's the next biggest step, is getting involved. If you're just sitting on the sideline expecting things to change in your state, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. Once you get involved and you support AMRA, you support what you guys are trying to do and get everything to the next step and so on and so forth. It's not going to take days, months. It's going to take years. But guess what? Yeah. By you getting involved is going to help the cause get to where it needs to be for the future generations. Plain and simple.
If you can't stand up to the government, then support somebody that does. And I'm not going to make a big spiel about making donations to AMRA, But here's the thing, guys. I'm personally being sued for $2 million by a radical environmental group out of Idaho for dredging on my valid claim with a valid permit because they hate the fact that we stand up to them and we don't sit down and shut up. So we're in this a couple of $100,000 to fight this lawsuit, and we're going to fight this, and we're going to take it, if we can, all the way to the Supreme Court. So if you want to support something, support that and support the people, whether it be AMRA or whether it be whoever that is fighting these giant behemoth bloated government agencies, because you know what? Nobody else is.
Well, and the thing is with that same subject is those crazy agencies that are fighting you guys don't have any actual facts on you guys actually cleaning up the rivers and the creeks, pulling lead out, pulling they that's the problem, is they don't have these facts, backing what they're trying to do against AMRA. That's the problem. So without people standing up to the problem, then it's going to be a continuous fight for years and years to come. So it's not hard to stand up and support AMRA. It's not hard to stand up and support the fight and trying to get things changed per state. It's not hard. It's
a good example of that, Jared, is really all the BS that we see with this whole lockdowns and mandates and vaccines and all that kind of stuff. It's about standing up for your fundamental rights, whether it be medical freedom and your freedom to, whatever goes into your own body, to mining rights and being able to do the things that were passed legally bound by our Constitution and the founding documents of how this country was created. It has to do with standing up. And, we used this earlier is the example of these truckers. Now, maybe that's Canada and, they're completely lost as far as socialism goes, but that's what it takes.
Same situation.
People standing up saying, you know what, I'm not going to stand for this. Morally, it's what I need to do because it's the right thing to do.
Right. And that's what it boils down to, is people standing up and actually pushing for the cause. I mean, you have so many different people in today's day and age, more than ever, especially with the lockdown, getting into prospecting, getting outdoors, the little tiny fundamentals of being locked at home and not being able to go to restaurants and this, that, and the other. Like you said, if you're not going to stand up for yourself, toward the government, then stand up for someone pushing for that change. And it doesn't take a lot. Go and support AMRA. They're pushing as hard as they can possibly push with all the situations going on right now. And mind you, it's not going to take days and months. Like I said, it's going to take years.
Yeah.
But if we don't have the people backing, then it's just going to be a continuous fight. We can sit here and go on any social media platform and argue about it and whine and complain. But if you're not actually supporting the cause to get things changed, then what are you really doing? I mean, that's what it boils down to, man. That's honestly what it boils down to. So, I'm
sorry, go ahead.
I'll go for it, Shannon.
Well, I hope that people have learned some things from this tonight. Granted, what we wanted to do is to kind of take them through and give them an overview of the steps. And so next week when we go through this is we're going to drill down, and you're going to see on this screen specifically Jerry running the MLRS and pulling up a master title plat and things like that. And we're actually going to fill out the paperwork, and then we'll review all of those processes again. So our goal here, guys, is that at the end of this whole series of podcasts is that you will be able to, from the comfort of your own home, know exactly what it takes and how to do that, of determining if the land is open, to fill out the paperwork, to actually go out and make the discovery, from going to the county and filing it with BLM, putting up your markers and all of those kind of things, and then maintaining that, going forward into the future so you don't lose the claim. That's the goal of this whole entire thing. And so as a part of that, all of these other issues, whether it be claim jumpers or 14-day rule of camping, all these different things are a part of that. And that's why it's so difficult. There's no way that you could do this in an hour or even 2 hours. It has to be into this series like this.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit is, from what I've experienced with this first part of the series is all of the different topics. When you first go into something as big as how to file a mining claim, you have so many different aspects that you can spend its own time on, day in and day out. So like you said, Shannon, when we're trying to combine everything into a series, it's really tough. But I think with this first part of the series, folks are going to be able to start back at the beginning and be able to have all of their questions answered when they start their, I guess you could say, expedition or their journey into getting a placer claim or, a mining or, a hard rock claim, and, like you said, we're going to jump into on the second part of the series, we're going to jump into those more tougher situations with filing the paperwork, with, all the other different ins and outs that has to do with the second part of how to file a mining claim. I think what we did in the first part of the series explained of a lot of the most basic common questions that a person would have. If I say, hey, I want to go file a claim. I want to go out this weekend. I want to go jump on this piece of land, see if it got gold. How do I do this, that, and the other? I think we covered all those bases for the first part of the series. And I think once we jump into the second part, we'll get to a point where we can really put, the hammer on the head of the nail and, show them the paperwork, show them, how to properly file, what you have to have and what you don't really need, and so on and so forth, and go from there. Jerry, as far as this first part of the series goes, what are kind of the things that we can look forward to with the second part of the series?
Yeah, well, like I said before, the hardest thing people are going to have the hardest time with is the researching on what existing claims are in the area they are looking at. The good part about that is most people, if they're to the point where they want to file a mining claim, they already have an area that they're thinking about. They already been out there. They already kind of know who's mining in the area. They know if they've seen claim markers in the area, and that's going to help the research go a lot better when it's in their kind of their backyard. If you're starting from ground zero, you're in California and you're researching a claim in Arizona, that's a little harder because you've never been there.
Right.
You can certainly determine if the ground is open for mineral entry. Actually, Arizona is a little bit easier in that a lot of the counties in Arizona have their resources online. So if you get the right search parameters, you can find out what claims are there.
Right.
So that'll give you a leg up. But that's a rare thing these days. Most states don't have that resource available online. But yeah, that's where we're at. We'll dive into it next time with the beginning stages of the research. Master title plats are a bit tricky to read. We'll pull one up and look at it, and we'll probably pull the I-bar one up and look at that area and see just how to determine the status of the ground that we're having this issue with. It'll be very clear. Hopefully it'll be very clear when we're done with it.
Definitely. Well, Shannon, Jerry, I appreciate you guys coming on the first part of the series and hopefully helping a lot of different folks with a lot of different questions. I know even the most common questions for some prospectors can be very tough. because, you know, like we were talking about earlier, you jump on Google, you put a question, and you get 1,000 responses. You
Most
know
of
what I
them are
mean?
going to be wrong.
and exactly. So hopefully we were able to clear up a lot of those different questions, hits, runs, errors, concerns. And like I said, I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day or your evening thereof, and being able to come on this series and really educate the community, and have them benefit from the knowledge that you guys have. Because, you know, we've had a few comments that says, you know, you could pay good amounts of money to try to, you know, get this knowledge and still come up short. So I really appreciate you guys jumping on the podcast. And, you know, I hope everybody watching right now looks forward to the next series of the podcast, where we get into more finer details. With that being said, do you guys have anything else that you guys want to say before we hop off of here and call it a night?
I would just encourage everybody to, no matter how silly they think the question, write your questions down. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
We'll answer it the best of our ability and truthfully. And just so don't be afraid to ask questions, because to be honest with you guys, the reason that we formed AMRA is I was just like a lot of you out there. I had no idea what my rights were, and I was frustrated. And you know, I educated myself, and I surrounded myself with people that knew a hell of a lot more than I did. And that's how I've gained my education and my knowledge as far as mining rights go, is really just self-taught and learning and being around, like I say, people that knew more than I did. So the only way that you're going to gain that education is by asking questions and reading stuff. So when we make recommendations about Tom Kitcher's book, or, you know, looking at the 2800 manual of the Forest Service, or some of the videos that we've put up on how to deal with a claim jumper or RS 2477, go and watch those, read it. And you know what? You're going to learn, you know, watch it twice, you know, read it twice until you feel comfortable that you've retained that. Because the mining grants, guys, are incredibly powerful. And most people don't know how to apply that power that you were granted by Congress to you. And the only way to learn that is by reading or watching. So, or asking questions. So next week, when we do part 2, make sure you bring a question.
Bring a question and maybe a notebook and a pen or a pencil. It's going to get extremely exciting. And like we were talking about earlier, it's going to get into fine detail.
You know, one other thing that I'm going to throw out, and then I'll let Jerry say whatever he wants. I promise you next week, I will find that picture of Jerry with the flower in his ear, and I will fact, promise.
Send it my way, Shannon. We'll get it up on there.
I will. Can you make that like big screen?
I can make it a full screen.
I like
full screen indeed. So, all right. Well, Shannon, I appreciate you, man. You have a good night. Jerry, you have a good night. Everybody watching, I hope you have a good night. If you didn't have time to watch it live tonight, it'll be up on the YouTube page. And then, of course, it'll be on the AMRA website once all the editing and the finishing details get done. With that being said, you guys have a good evening. Shannon, Jerry, everybody watching, and we'll see you soon.
All right, buddy. See you guys.
All right.
Thanks, Jerry.